Well, thank you for joining us tonight for your 5 News at 10. I'm Morgan Wrigley. Darren has the night off. We start with 2 key issues involving money in Crawford County tonight. The sheriff's office is looking into a program to house federal inmates in their county jail. And controversy continues with who will fit the bill for legal fees in their library lawsuit. 5 News reporter Lauren Spencer has the latest from the Crawford County Quorum Court meeting tonight.
My staff decided that it would be a great opportunity for us to do that and also make extra revenue in that process.
Sheriff Daniel Perry aimed to get into a contract with the U.S. Marshals Service to house inmates in the county jail.
This would really increase our budget where we could afford things that we really need, like radios and equipment, guns, that type of stuff.
The U.S. Marshals Service would pay Crawford County $60 a day per inmate, and Sheriff Perry says they have the room.
It's a good deal because if we get full and we need extra space for local inmates, they will come immediately and come get them and relieve them.
But not all Quorum Court members are on board. The measure failed.
We've even received calls from those deputies in the sheriff's office, and it's overwhelmingly, they don't want this. First of all, the amount that is being offered is very low.
It just doesn't sound like that good of a deal, like we could have done better.
We will likely have to call a special meeting in the coming weeks.
Crawford County has been ordered by a judge to pay $112,000 in legal fees tied to a lawsuit involving the public library system. In 2023, a group of parents sued the county and library leaders after LGBTQ books meant for children were moved into the adult section. A judge later ruled the books must be returned to their original location. Now the plaintiffs have filed another lawsuit, this time to stop Crawford County from using the library's budget to pay the legal fees. In Crawford County, covering news where you live, Lauren Spencer, 5 News.
The Quorum Court set a special meeting to talk about the library issue on April 28th. As far as housing federal inmates, Sheriff Perry says he doesn't plan to bring the measure back to the Quorum Court. Well, the National Weather Service says a tornado touched down on Easter Sunday in Fayetteville. This is video captured from a Ring doorbell camera when the tornado hit the Hugh Mount Village neighborhood in northwest Fayetteville. Survey teams say they confirmed the storm produced an EF1 rated tornado. Here's some Sky 5 video showing some of the damage it left behind. The storm packed winds of over 100 miles per hour, ripping roofs on several homes in its path. Joshua Weisel is in the 5 News Weather Center right now with the latest on what today's report from the Weather Service is telling us.
Yeah, and that was a confirmed EF1 tornado, and that was winds between 100 and 110 miles an hour. And we're getting the latest details from the National Weather Service. They just put out a little bit more information on the path. It was on the ground for 3 miles, so it was on the ground for quite a bit of time. We'll have more details here coming up probably tomorrow with more on that path of that storm. Here's a look at what's going on across the region today. Thankfully, more quiet, as you can see. 62 with a light south-southeast wind in Bentonville. River Valley, just a little bit warmer by 1 degree, currently 63 with a calm wind across the area. So overall, it's a great evening across the area. Overnight tonight, we'll see some clouds start to roll in as well into portions of the area. As we start off into tomorrow morning, it'll feel a little bit more mild. Here's a look at some of those temperatures across the region. So not too bad for this evening. We'll have more details on the forecast coming up. We're going to be talking about another great day tomorrow and then a little bit more of an active pattern as we get to about midweek. Stick around. We'll have details on that in just minutes.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Well, we're following breaking news tonight from the Arkansas Department of Health. They've confirmed another measles case in Arkansas. This brings the total number of cases in the state this year to 3. No information has been made available about the 3rd patient, but the first 2 cases were in central Arkansas earlier this month. The health department did confirm, though, they do not believe there have been other public exposures since that first case was confirmed on April 10th. And in Oklahoma tonight, the total number of cases linked to the outbreak is now 12. The health department says the cases are in mostly unvaccinated patients. Health officials say being vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself against measles, and they're urging anyone who is unvaccinated or thinks their vaccination may be out of date to reach out to their health care provider. Arkansas's League of Women Voters is filing a lawsuit to block several new laws from taking effect. The laws are focused on the ballot initiative process. The lawsuit alleges that laws passed this past legislative session would violate the U.S. Constitution. This comes after 2 ballot initiatives introduced by the League of Women Voters were rejected by the Attorney General this year. You can read more about the lawsuit on our website, 5newsonline.com. Well, leaders in the Arkansas State Senate from both sides of the aisle are speaking tonight after the close of the latest legislative session. From education to health care to public safety, the legislature sent Governor Sanders hundreds of bills she signed into law this year. Republican President pro tempore of the Arkansas State Senate, Bart Hester, says the session was successful. He says securing $75 million for a new prison, enhancing penalties for illegal immigrants who commit felonies, and universal free breakfast for public school students were highlights. Meanwhile, Arkansas House Democratic leader Andrew Collins says this legislative session will be remembered by power grabs, excessive spending, and hot-button national issues trickling into Arkansas politics. Collins says additional money allocated to the education voucher system, spending on a new prison, and restrictions on the ballot initiative process are harmful to Arkansans.
I define this session as promises kept to the people of Arkansas. They continue to elect a conservative majority in the House and the Senate, conservative governor, and promises delivered. Less regulation on the people, less taxes, removing government from their lives anywhere they can is a very successful session, in my opinion.
We'll remember this legislative session for a few things. Number one is the spending on what I would consider to be misguided priorities. So a huge amount of money has been expended and will continue to be devoted to vouchers, private school vouchers that primarily benefit students already in private school, and also an attempt to build a prison that could be up to $1.5 billion. So those 2 budget items really constrained the rest of what we could do as a state.
Tonight, Arkansas Governor Sarah Sanders is also speaking about one of the bills she signed into law this year. It allows the use of nitrogen gas for executions. She said this weekend that the state is not in a rush to resume executions. When asked about a timeline, the governor said the issue requires careful consideration. She told the Associated Press, quote, "Anybody rushing into a decision like that doesn't understand the severity and responsibility." That statement by the governor gives an indication of the controversy that awaits if and when executions resume. It's been 8 years since Arkansas's last executions, when a group of inmates was put to death in April 2017 as the state's supply of a lethal injection drug was set to expire. One of those inmates was Liddell Lee. He was convicted and sentenced to death for the 1993 murder of Deborah Reese. But in 2020, 3 years after his death, new testing concluded that his DNA was not on evidence found at the scene. The same test also found DNA from an unknown male. Cases like this are why Representative Nicole Clowney says she voted against the nitrogen bill.
I am not presuming to know the truth of what happened in that particular case. But what I do know is that we spent a lot of time today talking about giving people, the worst criminals of the worst, what they deserve, and presuming that those are the only people who will be impacted by this bill if it becomes law. But they won't be. Because as long as humans are responsible for these decisions, we will get it wrong sometimes.
There are currently 24 inmates on death row in Arkansas. Well, new tonight at 10, the Education Department says it will soon begin referring student loan borrowers that are in default to credit agencies. The federal government paused that practice in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this also means that for borrowers in default, the government could start garnishing wages. Currently, more than 5 million borrowers are in default on their federal student loans. The changes go into effect on May 5th. And as President Trump nears the end of his first 100 days back in office, the bulk of this historic second term is still ahead of him. But his remarks about another presidential campaign are raising questions. Megan Malaris with our Verify team looks into the constitutional questions at play.
President Donald Trump is making history as the first U.S. president since Grover Cleveland to serve non-consecutive terms. Could he also be the first since President Franklin Roosevelt to serve a third? In March, President Trump said he's not joking about a third term, claiming there are methods by which to do it. Let's verify. Our sources are the 22nd and 12th Amendments and Elon poll director Jason Husser. The answer is no constitutionally, with two possible caveats: succession and another amendment. The 22nd Amendment limits the presidency to no more than 2 total terms, plus a half term if the VP ascends into the presidency and later runs for office. What about vice versa?
Vice President Vance became president in 2028, and then President Trump became vice president, and then President Vance stepped down. That is an untested mechanism. The question on my mind is, could they get into that vice president role to begin with?
The 12th Amendment says no one ineligible for president can be vice president. Changing either amendment would require 2/3 majority in both the U.S. House and Senate and ratification by 3/4 of state legislatures.
While President Trump won handily throughout the election, he won nowhere close enough votes to have the level of support needed for a constitutional amendment. Never say never. If all of a sudden, President Trump invents the cure for cancer, then all of a sudden maybe people change their minds.
In the case of a succession amendment or both, it would be up to the Supreme Court to interpret what's legal. With your Verify, I'm Megan Malaris.
Harvard University announced today it's taking legal action against the Trump administration. The lawsuit centers on more than $2 billion in grants that were blocked after the school said it would defy White House demands to limit activism on campus. Harvard filed the lawsuit in Boston federal court today.